So Darkwood is a very strange game. It's an enigma, and unlike any other video game I've ever played. It's a survival horror game, yet dying does not come with any severe punishment on the default difficulty. It's one of the scariest games I've ever played, and yet 99% of the time it achieves that level of terror without ever resorting to cheap jump scares. It's an incredibly challenging game that borders on unfair at times, and yet I never gave up in complete frustration. It's a very slow game where making any real progress can take hours, and yet it never gets boring. In other words, Darkwood is one of the best indie horror games I've played in years. Darkwood begins with a short cutscene where a narrator tells us about a deadly plague and a forest that is slowly growing around him, cutting him off from the outside world. He also mentions how the people of this land seem to believe that he is responsible for all this misery. The game then cuts to a man waking up from his desk, presumably the same man who was speaking to the player a few moments ago. From exploring his house, we learn that the man is probably a doctor, and that the year seems to be 1985. We also learn that the doctor's dog is gravely injured, and will more than likely die soon. The player is able to end the dog's suffering, if they so wished. The doctor then sets out to find gasoline for his generator. This whole section basically works as the game's tutorial, and I'd highly recommend you don't skip it if it's your first time playing the game. The doctor encounters some deeply disturbing imagery on his journey, before finally stumbling across a man lying unconscious on the ground. He searches the man, and finds a key with the number 21 attached to it. Since the doctor is sure that this man knows how to escape the forest, he takes him back to his house, and promises to let him go if he reveals how to escape from the forest. As time passes and the doctor becomes more desperate to escape the forest, you can see his grip on reality starting to fade. He also becomes more violent towards his guest. Eventually, the strange man manages to escape his confines, and now we are controlling him instead of the doctor. At first I found this character swap rather strange, but I would soon learn that Darkwood loves to play around with your expectations, and that nothing is ever what it seems. The man explores the doctor's house, and after one of the game's few actual jump scares, he is forced to kill a violent man attacking him. Afterwards, some strange creatures attack the house, and just as all hope seems lost, the man awakens in a strange house with no idea of how he got there. For the time being at least, it appears that he is safe, and this is where the game truly begins. I think it's important to say up front that you don't want to play this game on the hard or nightmare difficulties on a first playthrough, as both difficulties feature permadeath. Similar to something like Dark Souls, dying is a frequent occurrence in Darkwood, and I don't feel it's fair to have to start the entire game again from scratch just because you bit the dust one too many times. On subsequent playthroughs, sure, go nuts, but for that initial playthrough, I'd recommend playing on normal. So once Chapter 1 begins, you're pretty much left to fend for yourself, and these first few hours of the game can feel incredibly overwhelming because there's so much to learn. You have a map, however landmarks aren't marked on it, and you need to discover their location yourself before they are finally marked on there. Think something like Hollow Knight's map system, and you have the general idea. Darkwood has a lot more in common with survival games like Don't Starve than it does with, say, Resident Evil. For that reason, I wouldn't necessarily call Darkwood a survival horror game. I'd sooner call it a survival game with horror elements. Which is pretty much the same thing now that I think of it.
You idiot. You're honestly an idiot.
Darkwood features a traditional day-night cycle, like many other survival games. During the day, it's important to scavenge for any supplies you can find, because at night, the forest becomes too dangerous to be caught wandering about in. Before night arrives, you need to return to your hideout, because it's the only location that offers relative safety from all the monsters wandering about outside. However, for your hideout to effectively function as a safe house, it also needs electricity and barricades. To power the house's electricity, you need to find gas canisters littered around the world and use them to refill your power generator. This will allow you to turn on the lights in the house. You can also barricade the windows of your house by using wooden planks. You can find these in the forest, or you can use a saw to turn logs into planks of wood. You can also craft different traps and weapons to protect yourself so that any creatures make it into your house. It's a lot to remember, and honestly, you're probably going to die a few times before you figure it all out. But that's all part of the fun. If you are still outside when night falls in Darkwood, you are pretty much dead. You need to stay within your cabin at night if you want to have any hope of surviving long enough to see the dawn. But even staying inside your cabin does not guarantee absolute safety. The best part about these sections is that you genuinely don't know what each night is going to throw at you. One night you might be just dealing with standard enemies. The next night you might come face to face with a terrifying crow lady who screws up your vision every time you look directly at her. One of the most terrifying experiences I've had with this game was during one night section when this happened.
Fucking hell.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm used to seeing strange, ghost-like men sitting at the end of my bed, but I've never experienced it in a video game before. It completely unsettled me, but it was also during this moment that I came to a big realization. I fucking love this game. Not since Eternal Darkness on the GameCube has a game fucked with my head like Darkwood has. Even when I finally was sure I had the game figured out, Darkwood would find some other way to screw with my mind. The developers of the game, Acid Wizard Studio, wanted to create a horror game that didn't rely on jump scares, and while I don't think they fully succeeded in that department, I do think that they have created one of the few horror games that can effectively build dread without relying on such tactics. In much the same way as Silent Hill, Darkwood wouldn't be nearly as scary if it wasn't for its expertly crafted sound design. Even seemingly mundane locations become far more ominous with all the off-screen noises you can hear at times. Trust me, a good pair of headphones are a necessity if you want to experience this game properly. There isn't a whole lot of music in Darkwood, but the music that is here is very memorable. The track that plays on the beginning of each new day is one of the most relaxing music tracks I've ever heard in a horror game. There is a good reason for this though. The start of each new day in Darkwood is the only real breathing room you're given in the entire game. Time is frozen until you leave your cabin, and you're also given a chance to stock up on items, thanks to a travelling salesman who appears at your cabin every morning. Buying items from traders doesn't work like you would probably expect it to. There isn't actually any currency you can use to buy items within the game. Instead, Darkwood uses something called reputation. The more reputation you have with a trader, the more items you can purchase from them. You can raise your reputation with a trader by completing various tasks or by selling some of your own goods. It's an interesting system, and it makes sense that such an economy would exist in a world where money is all but useless, since everyone in Darkwood is cut off from the outside world. There is a lot of crafting and item management in Darkwood. A huge amount of your playtime will be spent fiddling around in menus and inventories, so if that doesn't sound like your kind of thing, you can safely pass on this game. For everyone else, however, Darkwood is one of the most intense survival games ever made. Death is waiting around every corner. Even something as simple as gathering wood can quickly end in your debt if you aren't careful. It can feel straight up unfair at times, especially since the melee combat system is fucked and should only be used as a last resort. Most of the time, your best option is to simply run, but since some of the creatures you'll encounter are almost impossible to outrun, you will basically be forced to fight them in order to have any hope of surviving anyways. It's a nightmare of a game at times. To increase your chances of staying alive, you'll need to gather as many materials and tools as possible, because the more you have, the quicker you'll be able to craft better weapons and armor. Eventually, you'll be able to craft actual guns, which can be incredibly useful in dealing with enemies. But even then, you need to worry about your incredibly limited ammunition, because you can't craft bullets. Any extra ammunition will have to be discovered out in the world. Darkwood can be incredibly cruel at times, and even when you finally feel like you're making real progress, the game will quickly find some way of reminding you that you're pretty much just as fucked as you've ever been. When you die in Darkwood, you will lose half of your inventory if you are playing on the normal difficulty setting. This can be almost unbearable if you find that you've just had all your firearms and melee weapons taken away from you. The best way to tackle this problem is to store all weapons and items you are not currently using in storage until you really need them. Thankfully, the first few hours in Darkwood are pretty tame when compared to what comes later, and death should not be a common occurrence for most players in the beginning. Your main objective in Darkwood is to find a way out of the forest. However, since the Doctor stole your key in the prologue, your first task is to track him down. To discover the Doctor's location, you will need to gather clues from the local inhabitants, and as expected, these aren't your everyday civilians. Practically everyone you talk to in Darkwood is unusual in one way or another. Let me use the first few hours of the game's story to demonstrate how strange Darkwood can get. If you want to avoid spoilers, you can skip to this time, although I won't be spoiling anything past the first 2 or 3 hours. So one of the first characters you'll encounter in Darkwood is this man with a wolf's head. He is a deeply mysterious character who seems to know more than he lets on. The wolf man agrees to help you locate the Doctor if you retrieve a key for him. This quest leads you to the house of a crazy chicken lady. I mean, all chicken ladies are crazy, but this one takes it one step further. Before you have the chance to figure out the location of the key the wolf wants, you hear the sound of a violin outside the house. Looking around outside, you see someone run and hide underneath a tractor. You discover that this boy was playing the violin for a girl he's infatuated with. He also claims that this girl has been imprisoned by the chicken lady, and he begs you to find the key to the girl's room, which just so happens to be the same key the wolf is looking for. So once you finally find the key, you're left with a choice. Do you give the key to the wolf, who seems like he can't be trusted, or do you give the key to the boy, who seems a lot more genuine? For this playthrough, I gave the key to the boy, but not before I checked out this girl for myself, and oh Jesus Christ! Oh, who am I kidding? I totally would. I just want someone to love me. Someone to hold me every night and to tell me everything is going to be okay. Maybe this girl could be that for me. Oh, what's that? You want me to cover you up? Well, fine, you ungrateful bitch. You fucking freak. So once you give the key to the boy, he begs you to go to his mother's house to retrieve his violin. He tells you to give this picture to his mother because it will make her happy and she will be more than glad to let you take the violin. But once you get to the house, all that's waiting for you is this. I love this scene. Was the woman in the bathtub the mother? If so, why did she beg you not to take the violin? Who was the dying man? So many questions to ponder, and the game is full of memorable moments like this. The world and lore of Darkwood are fascinating, and one of my favourite parts of the game was finding an item or a journal entry that would fill me in more about this crazy world. It makes suffering through the incredibly difficult gameplay all worth it. Very quickly, I want to talk about the Switch port, because it's where I chose to play the game. Simply put, it's not a great port. The frame rate is all over the place, and never seems to hit a steady 60 FPS. During certain moments, like when you're running through a field of crops, the frame rate just fucking tanks. On top of that, the controls aren't ideal. Navigating menus seems a lot more clunky than it needs to be. A lot of the time I would accidentally drop an item instead of transferring it, because the button layout is screwed. It's very obvious that Darkwood was created with PC in mind, so if you have the option, I'd recommend playing it there. The Switch port is adequate and is still an acceptable way of playing the game if you have no other option. I didn't think I'd have so much to say about this game. I don't like survival games, and I don't like roguelites. It's not that roguelite games are inherently bad, it's just that I appreciate tight pacing and good level design in video games, and roguelites aren't really capable of providing either of those qualities. But I just clicked with Darkwood. The game's suffocating atmosphere, engaging gameplay, and fascinating story kept me hooked for the 25 hours it took me to complete it. Darkwood is not for everyone, but if you have the patience to tackle its uncompromising difficulty, you'll find a lot to love about the game. Okay, thank you for watching my video. Some small things I need to quickly mention. Firstly, from here on out all my videos will be reviews. I know a lot of people like my Let's Plays and comedy skits. Well, I like them anyways, but I'm trying to grow my channel, and in order to do that I need to stick to one format. Secondly, I'll be letting my viewers decide what to review next from now on. The choices for the next review are Resident Evil 2 Remake, Devil May Cry 3, Dino Crisis, The Evil Within, or Kingdom Hearts Retrospective 1 and 2. Or if you prefer my TV reviews, you can also vote for Frasier, The Mighty Boosh, or Curb Your Enthusiasm. Also, I have a Patreon, and it would be super cool if someone would take pity on me enough to donate $1 a month to it. Anyways, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Peace out. Also, I have a Sonic the Hedgehog retrospective coming out in a few days, but it's probably not what you're going to expect. I think it's pretty good, so look forward to that.